This just in, Penn Badgley is explaining why dating his Gossip Girl co-star Blake Lively was a struggle.
It was the struggle.
Blake Lively is in full meltdown mode after Penn Badgley finally exposed the emotional wreckage behind their Gossip Girl romance.
She seems like a rather shitty person.
While he wrestled with identity, pressure, and being typecast as Dan Humphrey, Blake turned the drama into a PR goldmine. Her polished image, it's crumbling, one quiet truth at a time.
Even though no one may be actually asking you to do this, you feel like you're constantly needing to prove yourself in some manner.
So, on April 23rd, 2025, Penn Badgley did the unthinkable. No, he didn't write a tell-all book or trash anyone on Twitter. He did something much worse for Hollywood's queen of curated chaos. He told the truth. He sat down on Call Her Daddy and casually dropped the line that sent Blake Lively's entire public image into cardiac arrest. It was a struggle.
I mean, I don't know if he meant it that way, but now the headlines are running with it. The question's really a broader question of what was it like to live with so many parallels, but one of those parallels was the fact that he was dating his on-screen love interest as well, Blake Lively. And his first word was, it was a struggle.
That's it. Just 5 little words. But those 5 words caused a 5-alarm fire over at Blake's PR HQ. I'm pretty sure Stephanie Jones had to cancel her oat milk latte to deal with it. Suddenly, headlines exploded like Blake's bakery-themed trauma muffins. And all because Penn, the nicest guy in the room, said what we were all kind of guessing: dating Blake Lively wasn't a fairy tale. It was a crisis disguised in Chanel.
He went off, does go on tangents. He's right. There's a difference between film and TV. Film, it starts, it ends. You move on. In TV, it lasts for years, playing that character. People responding to that character. It's a lot more different.
Now, this wasn't some bitter ex hit job. He wasn't foaming at the mouth or pulling receipts. He just talked, calmly, with the kind of emotional honesty Blake's never once shown in her entire pressed, powdered life. And let's be real, for Blake, that's worse than any expose. Because when someone quietly exposes your mess, that's the stuff your PR team can't spin with a baby bump photo shoot and a donation to the NAACP.
Is whenever he speaks remotely positively, it seems like negatively too, it does get pulled back when Blake needs it. Now, I'm speculating this myself.
Let's talk about the chaos behind that little word, struggle. Because it wasn't just a breakup. This was a whole Serena and Dan horror story happening in real time, just without the CW filter and previously on flashbacks.
That Penn is also a member of the Baha'i faith, has been seen with Justin, seems to be friends with Justin, and it's been amicable, it seems, with Blake Lively since.
Penn and Blake were dating on screen and off, basically living a Tumblr fanfiction, except Penn was in an identity crisis and Blake was collecting red carpet points like Pokemon cards.
What a terrible person she is.
He said it himself. He couldn't separate himself from the role. Fans projected Dan Humphrey onto him like it was a personality transplant. He wasn't Penn anymore. He was Lonely Boy. But guess what? Blake Lively didn't mind. In fact, she leaned into it like a seasoned brand ambassador for Delusion.
Where she admits to poisoning the whole cast against co-star Penn Badgley.
While Penn was out here spiraling about who he even was, Blake was curating that cool, mysterious girlfriend aesthetic. You know the one. A little aloof, always in a perfect outfit, and never saying anything too real. Just enough mystery to keep the press guessing, but not enough to actually have to be vulnerable.
You were dating Blake Lively, you were dating Serena on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel like you were able to separate your actual job from your reality?
There is not enough separation, I think, for anybody.
She wasn't just playing Serena van der Woodsen, she became Serena. Except, unlike Serena, Blake didn't even pretend to be messy. She just exported the mess onto everyone around her. Let's be clear. Penn was 21 or 22 when all this went down.
But you did choose to date your co-star, which makes it even more complicated.
And I was 20, I was 21, 22. So I didn't have the emotional maturity to understand, to how to differentiate myself just in terms of self-worth. What people seem to think of Dan seemed to be what people thought of me.
Barely out of college age, stuck in a role that consumed his life, and dating someone who turned privacy into a power move. Imagine trying to figure out your self-worth when every girl at Starbucks is calling you Dan and the woman you're dating is acting like Vogue's human version of a screensaver.
You know, they were looking for a quick soundbite, and it was just like, okay, yeah, all right, okay, all right, It's like,
That was the media. It was way worse back then.
And while he was out here grappling with the concept of identity and self-respect, what was Blake doing? Smiling for the paps like she just invented vintage. The emotional maturity gap wasn't just there. It was a canyon. And Blake didn't even bring rope. Penn says people couldn't tell the difference between Dan and him. Blake? She was too busy playing both roles. The supportive girlfriend in interviews, and the calculated queen backstage. He said he felt trapped, like he constantly had to be on, as in emotionally performative.
and now I had enough sense, enough intelligence, enough self-worth, enough just, like I wasn't like losing myself. But it bothered me.
Can you imagine feeling like you have to act off-screen just to maintain peace in your relationship? Now imagine doing that while your partner is perfectly okay, cashing in on both your fake love story and your real pain. Now, here's where the real Blake roast begins. Penn talked about this insane pressure to perform in real life, like constantly. He said it was exhausting, surreal, and low-key, made him feel like he couldn't even be normal anymore.
Interfacing in that space can actually feel really crazy, and you suddenly feel the need to perform, and you're just like, why can't I just say something normal?
Meanwhile, Blake? Oh, she was the queen of the vague, polished interview. Never raw, never honest. Her entire persona was a designer curtain over the emotional Chernobyl she left behind. Her vibe was always effortlessly graceful, but Penn? He was efforting for two. And let's talk about Blake's favorite weapon, that low-key public persona. Oh, please. The woman who had a wedding at a plantation is suddenly shy? That's not low-key, that's calculated. It's giving, I'll walk 3 steps behind you so it looks like we weren't together.
There is not enough separation, I think, for anybody. You're seen as this person, you're called their name out on the street.
It's hard.
Penn literally recalled how she once told a reporter, "It's not a date," while they were at a premiere, together. Like, what even was the performance there? Did she think people just hold hands with their co-stars for fun? Or was this another Blake special? Pretend it's casual while simultaneously feeding the media breadcrumb content for the next week.
Because the Mirror ran with this a couple days ago. This was on the 20th. Out of nowhere, Penn Badgley says his ex helped save him amid struggle with fame. Now, you might think this is something that came up recently in his press tour.
Penn dropped another quiet bomb when he said he basically never dated in his 20s. Think about that. 3 long-term relationships, one being with the ever-intense Blake Lively, and yet he says he never really dated. Why? Because it didn't feel like dating. It felt like performing. And considering the other 2 women he's dated haven't sparked a nationwide PR panic, I think we can guess which one turned romance into an audition for best girlfriend in a fictional narrative. The final slap in the face? Penn's current relationship with Domino Kirk, yeah, the woman he actually married, with whom he's now expecting twins, is everything his time with Blake wasn't. Real, grounded, and off camera. No smoke, no mirrors, just vibes and twins. That's not just a glow up. That's an emotional escape story. So, yeah, Penn didn't come to cancel Blake. He didn't have to. All he did was talk. Genuinely, softly, like someone finally letting go of a heavy bag they've been carrying for 15 years. And somehow, that honesty did more damage to Blake's Barbie Dreamhouse PR empire than any gossip column ever could. Because when the quiet ones finally speak, the loud ones panic. And in Blake's case, that panic came in the form of emergency PR emails, resurfaced fluff interviews, and a full-blown brand crisis. All over 5 words. It was a struggle. And I believe him. Just days after Penn Badgley had the audacity to express human emotions on a podcast, a conveniently timed Variety article popped up out of nowhere, practically screaming, "Wait, Blake's a hero, remember?" The piece dredged up an old quote where Penn allegedly credited Blake with saving him from going down the path of substance abuse. Ah, how noble, how selfless, how completely out of context.
Where's the date? 2023. So, over 2 years ago. Somehow, this resurfaced right amongst the affidavit stuff that Blake's doing, the shady affidavit stuff.
Because here's what Penn actually said. And please read this in your calm, non-spin doctored voice. I never struggled with substances, but Blake didn't drink, and that helped. That's it. That's what the entire Rehabilitation Angel arc was built on. A casual comment about her sobriety somehow became this PR Oscar reel of Blake the Redeemer, complete with soft focus lighting and emotionally manipulative music.
A random Penn Badgley article came up with an old quote where he did actually say that Blake helped him in his sobriety.
Let's just call this what it is. Weaponized maturity. Blake didn't save Penn from addiction. She wasn't pulling him out of a club at 2 a.m. in heels and pearls. She just didn't drink. That's not a miracle. That's a preference. But instead of just letting that be a thing, her team took that tiny detail and shoved it into their She is a Saint machine and out-popped an entire redemption campaign.
To be honest, I never struggled with substances. Blake didn't drink, and I think our relationship in some ways saved me from forcing myself to go down that road. Which we've known about Blake. She didn't drink, to her credit. Good on her. She didn't go down that hole. And because he was there with her, he didn't go down the hole either. He didn't feel the need to go that hole, so good on them.
And would you look at that? This glossy redemption rerun magically aired right as Blake was dealing with some rather inconvenient legal issues. Subpoena scandals? Shady affidavit timelines? Who cares, right? Look at her. She made Penn drink water. Give her a Nobel Peace Prize. This whole resurface quote thing wasn't random. It was damage control disguised as nostalgia. You don't need a forensic team to see the fingerprints all over it. Blake's PR squad basically looked at the wreckage from Penn's podcast and said, "Quick, someone find a quote where she sounds like Jesus."
This article not only brings up that, but brings up a ton of other articles and mentions of what, they previously had said about each other. You and your ex had to work together after she got married to Ryan last year. Was that difficult? No, we were ultimately professional.
But let's talk about Penn again for a second. The man who's probably too polite for his own good. In 2015, he told HuffPost there was an amicable silence between him and Blake.
But there's an amicable silence, if that makes any sense.
Translation? They do not speak, they do not text, and she's definitely not getting a Christmas card. And when someone asked if he sent Blake and Ryan Reynolds a wedding gift, his answer was a masterclass in polite dismissal. No, I didn't.
I mean, like anything valuable, it was good and it was bad, and it was a learning experience. Did you send a wedding gift to Ryan Blake? No, I didn't.
Now tell me that's not the most elegant way to say absolutely not, and I wouldn't if you paid me. Penn has never bashed her. Not once. But what he has done is drop these surgical little truth crumbs that make Blake's entire PR persona fall apart like a Pinterest cake in the rain. He talks about being caught up in the show, like it was a 6-year hostage situation in heels. Blake, meanwhile, was the one writing the script. She wasn't caught. She was conducting.
And then she had the nerve, because she had 2 minutes of bad publicity when the film hit, to come out and try to blame it all on him. None of it was just due to the fact that she seems like a rather shitty person.
And here's where it gets delicious. Because when Penn refuses to give her the reaction she's used to, no scandal, no rage, no direct attacks, it leaves Blake with nothing to control. Silence doesn't trend. She can't manipulate it. So what does she do? Cue the savior narrative rerun. And this time, nobody's buying it.
He clearly doesn't want to talk about it. He's also not afraid to talk about it, but he's not going to talk about her negatively. He seems to be more professional in that. Seems like a good dude. Seems like a guy who has found more maturity and inner, being knowledge.
Then came the real downfall. And honestly, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't glorious. Within days of the podcast airing, every gossip blog from The Mirror to Popcorn Planet was scrambling to clean up Blake's mess. They started pushing out these safe, fluffy pieces about how Penn once said nice things. Remember the good times, they begged? But social media? Social media was not having it.
I think he's just trying to explain why it was so hard to separate himself back then at a young age, playing that character in Gossip Girl, which everyone was relating him to, mixed with dating, everything. I get what he's trying to say. I don't think it was as negative as some of the headlines out there are trying to claim, but...
Suddenly, the internet remembered everything, like a repressed memory triggered by a single word. Struggle-ste. People brought out the receipts. The plantation wedding, the suspiciously timed NBBW ACP donation, the Magnolia Pearl slave muffin, PR disaster, and let's not forget her greatest hits like My Boob Cake is Feminism and I Love Silence Unless I Control the Narrative.
I just really loved those patchwork like jeans that you have.
Magnolia Pearl.
Oh, yeah.
Those are my real life jeans.
Yeah.
People were digging up more dirt than TMZ on payday. And what did Blake do? Nothing, because she couldn't. For once, the internet didn't need a villain. They just needed a mirror. And Penn, without even trying, held it right up to her face.
He and Blake decided to get married at the Boone Plantation in South Carolina. That's where they got married. There's no slaves in that plantation right now, but you know, it was all about history, the braids. Were there ever slaves here? Did bad stuff happen here? How dare you get married here?
Even Popcorn Planet's Andy Signor said it out loud. Blake tends to resurface with a savior edit every single time something goes wrong. It's not a coincidence. It's a strategy. But here's the kicker. It only works when there's a bad guy to defeat. And Penn wasn't playing that role. He just calmly told his truth. And in doing so, he exposed how fake her entire empowered woman branding really is.
Meanwhile, the only evidence we're actually getting is stuff that's exposing Blake Lively.
You can't sell feminism while simultaneously building your legacy on controlling every narrative and burying the people who don't play along. That's not empowerment. That's PR fascism in designer heels. And this time, it backfired. Because Penn didn't give her anything to work with. No messy headlines. No Instagram rants. No ex-boyfriend meltdown. Just quiet reflection. Delivered with a sprinkle of wisdom and a dash of therapy. That's it. That was enough to bring the Blake Lively illusion crumbling down like a Magnolia Pearl fashion show in a wind tunnel.
In Hollywood, my own position is she's absolutely ruined her brand. She has started a fight she cannot win. She does appear like an Amber Heard to me.
So while her team was out there pushing supportive ex narratives like it was Black Friday at People magazine, Penn was busy living, thriving, talking about his kids, and quietly making Blake Lively's entire aesthetic implode without raising his voice or breaking a sweat. Because sometimes the most brutal takedown isn't a tweet or a tell-all or a scandal. Sometimes it's just a guy calmly saying, "It was a struggle." And the girl on the other end realizing the whole world finally saw behind the curtain. Let's talk about the aftermath of Gossip Girl, shall we? Because if that show was a launch pad, Blake Lively rode that rocket all the way to red carpet royalty. Fashion campaigns? Check. Lead roles in forgettable films with designer lighting? Double check.
She has just never had to do an ounce of anything in her life.
Magazine spreads describing her as a timeless icon with a voice so airbrushed you forget she's ever spoken out loud? Triple check. And while she floated through clouds of brand deals and buttery lighting, Penn Badgley? Yeah, he was left dragging a suitcase labeled Dan Humphrey's Emotional Luggage through the terminal of public opinion. This wasn't a fair split. Blake didn't just get the better PR agent, she got the better narrative. She became the elegant, relatable fashion queen, the it girl who made banana bread and wore Chanel at the same time. Meanwhile, Penn got hounded by Cosmo Girl and Vogue to give out dating advice, even though the man straight up said he was bad at dating. You know how humiliating it must be to open a magazine and see yourself giving advice you never believed in, while your ex gets a Style Icon of the Year award just for not tripping over her gown?
Although she admits she was unhappy when he was cast in the series, "At first I was so upset that they hired him," she says. "I actually poisoned the whole cast against him, but then they noticed that he wasn't a jerk and was actually a really nice, charming person."
Penn was trying to escape a fictional character. Blake was turning her fictional girlfriend act into a real-life resume. He couldn't even speak normally in interviews because the fame tornado made him feel like every word was a performance. And where was Blake during all this? Busy perfecting the art of smirking in a designer dress while pretending she didn't orchestrate every paparazzi shot like a Bravo producer on espresso.
It's date night for you guys.
Date night? In what sense?
You and Blake.
Oh, we're out here, but I mean, it's not that it's a date necessarily. Interfacing in that space can actually feel really crazy, and you suddenly feel the need to perform, and you're just like, why can't I just say something normal?
Let's be honest. She wore the costume of humility like it was couture, soft-spoken, barely political, just vague enough to be brand safe, and she sold it. The same machine that chewed Penn up polished Blake into a product. And she said, thank you, with a smile, and a curated Instagram caption. But here's where it gets juicy. April 23rd, 2025. Penn says 3 words. It was a struggle. That's all. No drama, no tea spilling, just quiet, honest reflection. And the internet lost its mind. Those words didn't hit like gossip. They hit like justice. Suddenly, threads exploded. Headlines multiplied. TikToks popped up like daisies in a PR graveyard. It was as if the entire digital world had been waiting for someone, anyone, to say something real. And when Penn did, everyone finally saw it. The curated, untouchable, golden-haired Blake Lively, not so golden anymore. While fans rallied behind Penn's gentle honesty, Blake's defenders scrambled like interns in a blackout. He didn't mean it like that, they cried. It's nostalgic, not negative. Oh, really? Because nothing screams nostalgia like looking visibly pained while discussing how you lost your sense of self in a toxic, fame-driven relationship.
Just in terms of self-worth. Like, what people seem to think of Dan seemed to be what people thought of me.
But the real problem for Blake wasn't what Penn said. It was what it unlocked. That one sentence acted like a master key, opening every dusty drawer in the collective memory of the internet. Suddenly, people remembered the plantation wedding, the slave muffin fashion brand she promoted, the random donation to the NAACP that suspiciously aligned with a trending backlash, the time she sold Southern Charm like it was a Pinterest board and not an aesthetic rooted in oppression. People remembered it all, and they weren't forgiving this time.
And the only reason that they donated this money is because after multiple times, after year, they had been getting slammed and receiving so much backlash for their plantation wedding.
Because here's the kicker. This wasn't about Penn venting. This was about the truth slipping through the cracks. You can only keep up a facade for so long before someone quietly pokes a hole in it. And when they do, all that perfectly curated air starts leaking fast. The America's sweetheart image fell apart not because of scandal, but because of subtlety. The mask didn't get ripped off, it slid off. And underneath, people didn't see a misunderstood angel. They saw a woman who was calculated, who was polished, who was self-serving in a way that only works until someone as honest as Penn opens their mouth. And Blake knew it. Because suddenly the same PR firm that probably billed her a cool $1 million a year was in full meltdown mode. Emergency interviews, ghost-written think pieces, a sudden reappearance on social media, conveniently with no comments allowed. You could practically hear the panic through the filters. Meanwhile, Penn, he was somewhere completely different, probably at home with Domino Kirk, waiting for their twins to arrive, far away from the mess he'd just unintentionally unleashed. He didn't have to subtweet. He didn't need to do an exclusive. He didn't even bother reacting. Because unlike Blake, who needs a team of 15 to curate authenticity, Penn just is authentic. That's what made it lethal. He didn't try to ruin her, he just told his truth. And somehow, it unraveled the entire myth of Blake Lively. All the rehearsed interviews, all the fake feminism, all the quiet, mean girl energy hidden behind soft lighting and boho outfits, none of it could withstand the simplicity of a guy saying, "That time in my life, it messed me up."
I think he's just trying to explain why it was so hard to separate himself back then at a young age, playing that character Gossip Girl, which everyone was relating him to, mixed with dating, everything. I get what he's trying to say. I don't think it was as negative as some of the headlines out there are trying to claim. But I also do think it was a subtle reality check. If I can't imagine it was easy, it must have been a struggle.
And honestly, maybe the real scandal here isn't what Penn said. It's that it took this long for someone to see Blake clearly, not as the quirky girl next door with the Pinterest perfect life, but as someone who built a career on strategic silence, image control, and emotional puppeteering. So yeah, call her daddy? Nah, let's call her out. And for once, the world actually did. And just like that, Blake's fairy tale collapsed. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss the drama they don't want you to hear.